very good evening to our viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight on the agenda. My name is Toivo Njabela. Tonight on the platform, we are joined by Evilastus Kaaronda. He is president of the oldest political party in the country, Swanu. Thank you, Evilastus. People always confuse the name. But it's such a pleasure to have you on the platform. It's an important year. It's 2024. But before we get into anything, the last time we engaged on a platform like this, you were representing NANLO, the labor union. Are you still involved in the union? Does it exist, as a matter of fact?
I know it exists, but I'm no longer involved.
Okay.
I'm on sabbatical.
You're on a sabbatical?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that was always your space. That is where you excelled. That is how we all got to know Kaaronda. So what transpired there?
Well, look, I thought I would make a transition into the political, realm, with the hope of carrying on the workers' struggle, but within the political, space.
Yeah.
We have had a lot of difficulties getting what we thought the workers, deserved, legislatively, for instance. I'm sure you would recall 2015, 16, the unlawful strike of the fishermen or the seagoing employees came as a result, among other factors, of the fact that the Labor Act did not cover the specificities of work at sea. So we needed to push government to ratify ILO Convention, I think 188, that deals with work at sea. That was only ratified in 2018 and started being implemented as from 2019. Now, I believe that if we had trade union leaders also involved within the political space, a lot of these things would have been done quite earlier, and the strike would have been averted. And I think that's one of the motivations that I thought a transition would actually help in the long run.
Yeah. That issue persists. The issue of fishermen persists. Did you abandon the ship? Did you leave them to their own devices?
No, I think as a union we did what we could do. You remember we went to court because the strike was unlawful. Naturally, we lost the case. But that was the end of the legal, road that anybody could have taken. Now, what remains to be done, I think, was, for the trade unions that are involved to fight for these employees to at least get, gainful employment, and peg that on to the quota system or the quotas that, government would allocate to the various, fishing companies. So I thought that would happen because before I left, we had done, similar things where workers were taken back, negotiated with government to give those companies, favorable consideration when it comes to the fishing quota and so on allocation. That was done, but I'm sure not everybody was, absorbed. Yeah, but that remains, the work of those that are involved there to continue.
Absolutely. In your assessment, what is the root cause of that situation? It's a sad situation. People have been on the streets. Some of them have camped at a particular area in Walvis Bay for a long time. But despite what might be the arguments right now, the genesis of this whole thing, in your understanding as someone who was very much involved, what do you recall?
Look, I think the workers were simply just robbed in broad daylight. The Labor Act would provide that a working day would consist of a maximum 9 hours, right? Added to that would be a maximum of 3 hours of overtime. Now, if you are at sea and you have netted fish, most of those employees would have worked a minimum of 19 hours. 19 hours a day without rest. And that's why there were a lot of accidents. A lot of our members had lost limbs, some died, and the overtime that was worked was never paid, it was never compensated. And that is what fueled the frustration and eventually the unlawful, strike. So that is the genesis of it, and that's when, of course, some of us, upon closer scrutiny, realized that the Labor Act was just simply inadequate, and the government needed to ratify and domesticate, the ILO Convention 188, and subsequently, of course, that was done, but that was only done in 2018. You see, so the struggles we're talking about are struggles that precede 2018.
Just lastly, on the subject of fishermen, fish rot happened. There were also a lot of labor consequences there. Some companies having lost their quotas so that they can be given to Fish Corps, which was used as a conduit, apparently, for fish rot. And these companies who lost fishing quotas had to get rid of people. What has been your general attitude towards fish rot?
You see, let me take you back again to the strike. During the course of that, a lot of the fishermen came to Windhoek, and the idea was to meet President Hage, the late president. And I remember thousands of these fishermen being kept at the roadblock, police not wanting them to come through until they could speak to me. So when I went to talk to the police at the roadblock, we then agreed that we would bring them in and they would give us a place at where they go and braai every Friday, the parkies.
Yes.
That's where we went to house the fishermen when they came in. A day after that, we met the president. Now, what I found, out of place, see, this was a labor matter, okay? So I would have understood if we met the labor minister and perhaps the minister of fisheries. But we went to State House. I think we met probably the entire cabinet. And we had our say, and we had hoped that the president would come to the rescue of these employees. And the day that followed our meeting at State House, we then had a meeting with the Minister of Labor, the Ministry of Labor. I think at that time it was, Erki Nimtina. And when we entered the boardroom, who did we meet? We met Esau, there was Erki, and there was Saki Shangala. Now, Saki had nothing to do with what was going on with his employees. I don't think he had anything to do with labor. And Saki, unfortunately, he took over the meeting and there was no solution found. So, yes, my take on fish rot is one that, it was an orchestrated thing by, the political elites. It was intended to enrich them. And I think it's only unfortunate that perhaps the eggs fell on, or is bound to fall on, Saki, Atikulipi, and Esau. But I think cabinet was aware of what was going on. I think our late president was very, very aware. And that's why he had, delegated or sent a person like Saki Shangala to a meeting that had nothing to do with his department or portfolio. So it's an unfortunate, I think, chapter in the life of most of these fishermen, as well as the country. A lot of our people lost their lives. They committed suicide, you know, because of what happened. And mind you, one of the companies that we struggled with, that point blank refused to even negotiate the return of workers, was Seaflower. You know, Seaflower, a subsidiary of Fishcore, headed by Mike Ipunywa. So yes, Fish Rot had a serious impact on the lives of these fishermen, and it is unfortunate that to this very day there hasn't been found any genuine solution.
What should be the consequences for anyone who will be found to have orchestrated that?
To be honest, I wish we had the Chinese regime. When you see, when you steal from the public, you don't only betray the trust that people have placed in you, but you also take away opportunities that could have benefited a lot of our people. So they must, in my view, if found guilty, be given the maximum punishment. But that alone does not begin to address the plight of these fishermen that we keep talking about. And I think they deserve to be taken in. They deserve to be absorbed into the employment opportunities that are there. But you see, I would go on further and say that the situation where workers or fishermen in this specific case remain salary earners and just employees, I think is also a key reason why a lot of these things do not, or a lot of our people do not benefit from the natural resources that we have.
Yeah.
Now, why not create a situation where these very same employees can also become shareholders of these very same companies and protect these companies from collapse, from thieves, from these corrupt, individuals, because they would know that protecting these, companies would mean protecting their very own bread. But you can't protect this bread unless you have a say, unless you are at the table. And I think being an employee alone, in my view, emasculates these very same, employees. But when you bring them to the table, you empower them, they become part owners of these companies, they become involved in the decisions that are made. And so nothing, in my view, would go wrong when you begin to involve these workers as key stakeholders, and not just employees or salary earners.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your former political home, Swapo, is being heavily linked to fish rot. There are testimonies by people like Mike Ngipunya, who blatantly says in court papers that money was channeled from Fishcore to Swapo ahead of the 2017 Congress under the guise of government objectives, but the money went into there. Swapo denies ever benefiting from fish rot. Mr. Paulus Noah of ACC found Swapo not guilty of any involvement in that. Is it a cock and bull story?
Look, I don't know what people expect from Paulus Noah, really. What do you expect him to say? To absolve Swapo? That's his, I think, area of expertise. I think he has time and again proven to be a very ineffective corruption, fighter. He has proven to be good when it comes to protecting his own interest and, by extension, the interest of those that he serves. He doesn't serve the public. He serves Swapo, he serves himself. And I think it's most unfortunate, and unfortunately, in Swapo, there are two things that happen. When you eat, you become the closest and best of friends of those that are in charge. But you eat, don't complain when you eat, and don't threaten to expose those that you eat together with. Otherwise, you will end up like some others who have even lost their lives. The second, of course, is that you must always play the fool, then you'll survive. You go very high, very, very far. But the moment you begin to question things, that's when you become a target. They would ostracize you.
Yeah.
So I don't expect anything good to come from Noah. It is clear that Swapo benefited, and I think a lot of the comrades within Swapo have also confirmed that what they saw during the elections and the time prior to Congress and so on, it was something that even they couldn't explain, because the money that was changing hands, money, some comrades had money in boots of their cars and so on, making payments and so on and so forth. Look, I don't think there's anything that is out of place as far as Noah's findings are concerned. That's his usual. He couldn't find anything wrong with people that we thought had done wrong things. So it's not surprising in that sense.
Yeah. Before you joined Swanu, you were, of course, a Swapo member, but actively, of course, you were a unionist. And it looks like it was your union work that has stepped on toes of many leaders in Swapo. But let me not put words in your mouth. What drove you out of the party?
Well, look, the Swapo that I joined, the liberation movement that I thought it was, and the Swapo that I got to experience were two different things. I came to learn that Swapo was not genuinely committed to the freedom of the black people in his country. And that's why, and I think the evidence speaks for itself. If you ask yourself who in this country lives in areas that are referred to as informal settlements, you wouldn't see a white person living in any informal settlement in the country. Who in this country lives in areas referred to as subsistence agricultural areas? No white person, all of them black. Poverty, unemployment afflicts the very same people. It has taken a strong racial dimension affecting black people of this country. Now, if Swapo was committed to the cause of our people, I'm sure it could have done more. It could have done more to liberate or to free our people from poverty. It hasn't done that. Unemployment afflicts the same people, right? And unemployment has always been a double digit. But Swapo's government wants us to believe that the biggest macroeconomic problem that we have to date is inflation, right? And that's why they are fixated with inflation targeting. That's why you will always hear that the central bank has increased the repo rate. What does that do if you increase the repo rate? You make the cost of borrowing just too high. Money becomes expensive. Now, if money becomes expensive and you have a company, that means you need to tap into your own reserves, into your own savings to be able to expand business. You can borrow because it's expensive. And the other side to it is that you would also need to lay off workers. You cannot employ people, you see. Yeah. Now, those are the macroeconomic strategies that we have seen the Swapo government pursue. But all of these things have failed time and again. They have failed here, they have failed everywhere else in the world, you see. We are told that having our dollar pegged to the rand is the safest thing we can. I mean, seriously, how can that be safe when that only, to me, it means we have lazy leaders who simply feel that they have created a comfort zone for themselves and they want to live in that comfort zone and they want to manage this thing the way it is and do not have any interest in taking risks and developing the country. You see? So we would remain financially or economically a province of South Africa for as long as we shall live, and our people would never be able to experience the kind of economic freedom that anybody must experience in their lifetime.
But what is the harm in being pegged to the rand? I mean, we are in the same monetary area. It saves us trouble of exchange rates and all these things. They are a stronger economy, and they are fighting. Their currency is fighting strongly against global currencies like the US dollars and whatnot, and we climb on their back under those circumstances. How worse can it be?
Why do we need to ride on anybody's back? When do we stand on our own?
Because it's a tiny economy. Ours is a very tiny economy.
People will tell you that Botswana is a tiny economy. I don't see Botswana struggling. It's about planning. It's about being serious with what you have to do. Botswana, in as far as I'm concerned, even look at the deal that Botswana has with De Beer. It's 100 times better than the deal Namibia has with De Beer. Why? It's about commitment. It's about competency. It's about seriousness. You see, so you have people whose interests or priorities are simply just misplaced. When you're supposed to be negotiating deals with De Beer, what most of our leaders think about is what they can get as individuals out of the deals. And that's why they sell us all out, So I feel that there must come a time when Namibia says, we are fine. Let us struggle, but at least we are struggling on our own. Engage other countries as equals, not as beggars. You can't be riding on South Africa forever and still want to convince the rest of the world that you're a serious player.
I hear you.
Look at the money that we generate in a country. We are said to be probably, if not the second, or probably the third highest net capital exporter. Now, if you export money, and most of our money, by the way, goes to South Africa. Now, if we are a net capital exporter, why is it that you have presidents going around the world inviting people from other countries to come and invest in our country when we have the money, but we export the money to South Africa? What kind of madness is that? If you have money, why don't you go out in the world and look for skills? Skills can be bought, but set your own agenda, your own industrial agenda, invite people to fit that agenda who have skills that are in sync with what you want to do. But to go out in the world and look for people to come and invest their money here would not help us. And I think Ramatex is a classical example of that. The fact that Ramatex today is dead, but AGOA still provides an opportunity for us, a market, tells you that the government has never been serious about anybody else other than those who lead it. You have a market. In other words, you have off-takers in America through AGOA, right? Now, if you have the infrastructure here that we have built for Ramatex, are you telling me that you can't find skills from outside of this country to bring here and help our own people also gain the very same skills and fit the American market? I mean, seriously.
I hear you.
Yes.
Before we go for a small break, Mr. Kaaronda, I just want to ask you one last question on your association with Swapo. The culture or the trend rather that I've observed for so many years is that Swapo becomes this ugly animal only when people like you have landed in a particular space, troubled space. In your case, you were with NUNW, it's a union affiliated to Swapo. You, of course, like I said earlier, you stepped on many toes. I thought it was a noble fight, but you angered some people there. You got fired by NUNW, and with that dismissal came your disassociation with Swapo. Why does Swapo only become this ugly creature when things like that happen?
I don't think that's a very accurate assessment, really, or analogy. You see, within Swapo, some of us tried. Take the GIPF issue. We pushed that, but everywhere it was blocked within Swapo, right? Wherever it may have made progress, you could tell it was just lip service being paid for this whole process, right? But naturally so, because most of the people who were implicated or whose names were listed in the reports, especially the one that was conducted by Namfisa itself, I mean, some of them were people very senior within Swapo, you see. So, but in truth, when you try from within to do what you feel is right, and you don't progress, you don't get anywhere, then the only option for you is to begin to get out of it and continue your fight. But the fight hasn't changed, it remains the same. I still believe that if those who had hegemony within Swapo were the rank and file, the situation would have been different. Some of us would not have left. But the hegemony of Swapo lies in the hands of those who control capital, those who have very sick relationships with the very same people that we are set out to fight, you see. So that's one side. The other side is there's so much that you see Swapo does or omits to do that simply doesn't speak to the reasons why some of us had joined it. Let's deal with the issue of genocide, for instance. I don't know if you have ever heard Swapo coming out saying they want to support the affected communities. It has never done that. Why not? Why not? Is it because of the tribes that are involved? They are not of any political significance to it? Or what exactly is the agenda?
Yeah.
And apart from Swapo not coming out in support of the affected communities, you have a government that constantly tells you that for as long as it is here and in its government, there shall be no discussions about ancestral land. Now, I mean, why? What is wrong with discussing ancestral land? You see, one Namibia, one nation doesn't mean that we should simply just ignore the diversities of our population. We are diverse people, you know. The fact that we have tribes in this country doesn't mean that it's a bad thing, and when you say you must recognize the identities of these tribes, it doesn't make the person a tribalist. But when you begin to neglect or negate your responsibility towards these tribes under the rubric of one Namibia, one nation, then you are actually being disingenuous. And I think Swapo has been disingenuous with its one Namibia, one nation mantra, you know, for want of a better word. You know, it has been disingenuous. You know, you cannot neglect, you cannot simply isolate or ostracize people and continue in their faces. Wherever you buy farms in areas that are in close proximity to the reservations of some of these groups, you bring people from far away, you plant them there, and you expect society to be okay. Yeah, that's not going to work, you see. So I think those reasons or those factors, together with many others, have pushed some of us or forced some of us to reconsider our association with Swapo, you know. And I feel that the Swapo that some of us thought we had joined and the Swapo that it is today, two different things. I'm sure others may disagree, others may agree. We can deal with the issue of how Swapo, for instance, handled the issue of detainees, you know. In Lubango, people in Tanzania, in Zambia, very own people, very own brothers and sisters who died, who perished, who were arbitrarily detained and killed.
Yeah, but that history has always been there when you guys...
Yeah, but you see, but the question is, until when do we ignore that? And I think I'm beginning to think also that perhaps one of the key reasons why Swapo is very allergic, if you will, or has this anathema towards dealing with this issue of genocide is also probably because it doesn't come to the table with clean hands, you know. So, and again, we may differ, we may agree, but there are certain things that we all learn as we move on.
Yeah.
And I think whether some of these things may have happened during the time that some of us were members of Swapo or not, it's inconsequential to the questions that continue to be asked today. And I think everybody and anybody in this country has every right to ask questions. And I feel the way that we have dealt with this thing is just not correct.
Yeah. We go for a quick break and then return with Evilastus Kaaronda.
Connection. It's in the human touch, the feeling of belonging. It inspires us and empowers us, creates clarity from complexity. It starts new conversations, unlocks the power of advice, and makes an impact on your life. At Alex Forbes, we pioneer insight to provide you with advice that connects your decisions of today to your impact tomorrow.
The agenda continues with Evilastus Kaaronda. Now, Mr. Kaaronda, let's turn our attention to your new political party. It's election year. Let's clear the ground first around your legitimacy as president of the party. There's been a lot of questions asked.
Yes.
There's a group led by, or part of the people in that group is Mr. Shikudu and others who continue to insist that you are not president of Swanu.
Right. Look, to insist is okay. I mean, it's within their rights, I suppose. 2022, Swanu had its Congress, held in Okahanja. The same Chikudus and others, they were there. Charles Kachivirwe, the Mamberwas, they were there. Congress concluded its business. Leadership was elected. It so happens that that leadership, has me as the president. Now, in all political parties, you always, find people who have their own views, but when those views, diverse as they may be, are tested, and the highest decision-making organ of the party makes certain pronouncements, whether you like them or not, you must abide. You swallow your pride, you abide by that, and you move forward. Now, I hear Jikudu calls himself a Secretary General of Swanu. Now, I know political parties in this country are registered under by the Electoral Commission and under, of course, the Electoral Act. Now, the registration certificate of Swanu is one. It has one registration, number. It has one head office. It has one parliamentarian. It has one Politburo. I appointed the Politburo. Our parliamentarian is part of that Politburo. We operate from head office. I'm in charge there. So I don't know which Swanu my brother leads, and I don't know where he leads it from. We are in court, with them. And the case is between Swanu as the plaintiff and they are the defendants. Now, which Swanu is in court and which Swanu is here Secretary General of when he was taken to court by Swanu? So there is no such, you see, it may take a while for people to accept that they are fighting a lost cause or a losing battle, but it is within their rights to do so, I suppose, until the court tells us otherwise. And that's why we took a decision to ask the court to assist us in this thing. Now, I'm also aware that at ECN, every political party has what they call a representative.
Yeah.
That representative is a member of my Politburo. His name is Isi Chihoreko. So I don't know what it is that Mr. Chikulu and his group are talking about. And it is something that, in my view, should actually no longer enjoy any attention. I mean, it's almost ludicrous, really, for anybody to suggest that there are two Swanus, or there's a leadership that Chikulu claims to be a Secretary General of, when there's only one Swanu.
Yeah.
And we will be contesting in the elections as Swanu under that very same registration certificate. So I don't know which one Chikulu will be coming forth with. Yes.
The party,
Yes.
as oldest in the country as it is, and also with a proud history, in fairness, it's a liberation movement in its own right, has really become a small party in terms of numbers. You can't afford these factions again, these court battles, this Shikudu group, gunning for your head ahead of a very, very important election in 2024.
You see, I do agree with you, and I think I understand where you're coming from. But sometimes one needs to break new grounds if one is to grow. There's something called constructive destruction, and I think, and I'm borrowing from Joseph, Schumpeter. In this case, you cannot arrive at anything new without dismantling the old that has kept us to the ground. I mean, Chikulu, what is he? He's probably beyond 60, 70 years of age. He has been with Swanu all his life. Swanu has always had serious electoral misfortunes under their tutelage. So the question is, what are they hoping to do which is new, which they couldn't do for the past 30 odd years? So my take is simple. With or without these comrades, we will move forward. We will have to break new ground, and we will have to sell Swanu, as you said, as a political party that has a proud history. And I think that time has come. We've been doing it. People seem to be buying into what we are doing. It's unfortunate that there is a faction like that, but we cannot labor on that. We've got to move forward.
Yeah. So, with the new dispensation in charge of the party, does the ideology also change? Maybe that electoral misfortune is linked to the ideology of the party. Maybe it's not appealing to many people. Do you maintain it? What is the ideology of the party?
I think, look, Swanu's ideology is premised on the need to respect the dignity of all people and to promote that dignity in a way that would promote equal access of these very same people to economic opportunities or to all opportunities in life.
Yeah.
Without regard to a person's social status or standing. The idea is to create a society in which all of us can have equal access to the kinds of services that every human being needs, every human being cannot do without. So we don't believe in a society where class dictates what the individuals get in the end, you know. It's not about you having money flying to the United States to get treatment when your country has institutions that you're supposed to strengthen and provide people the very same treatment or quality of treatment. You see, we want to deal with that and kill that. So the philosophy of Swanu, or its ideology, in as far as I'm concerned, remains very relevant. But the question is, how do you package it so that it begins to resonate with your contemporary voter? That to me is the issue. I mean, look, for instance, at LPM. LPM was founded on the premise that it's about land. It's a landless people's movement. Swanu has always been about land. But the way LPM had its campaign or message packaged was different, and it was effective. It resonated with people, and it got them 4 seats in parliament. So it's not so much the relevance or otherwise of the message. It's how it is presented, it's how it's packaged, and how accessible it is to those that would actually go to the polls. To rely on history as a former liberation, movement, it doesn't wash anymore. It won't fly, And I think a lot of our people within leadership of Swanu were also people who are not young. So they can't connect with the young voting demography. And that's problematic. The other one, of course, is when you look at how Swanu was structured, you would see already structurally that it was in no position to reach out to, for instance, the workers at the shop floor and gain the workers' support or ear. And in so doing, mobilize them to support the party's political program or political, success. So those are things that we have been trying to work on, and I strongly feel, with a little bit of of that more and more done between now and the elections, we could possibly see those fortunes reversed. I mean, misfortunes, reversed. So that is my take on that.
Yeah. Do you think things like rebranding the party, give it a new look, a new feel, like almost what PDM did? PDM, of course, they rebranded, and I am not naive to think that their increased presence in parliament was due to that. But it has given the party some sort of new identity from the DTA that a lot of people despised.
Well, they needed that as a way of perhaps cleansing themselves of that bad history that they have. What Swanu, however, needs to do is to just repackage its message, and then begin to bring in new blood, younger people. I think that to us is what is key, or what is pivotal. To rebrand, maybe not yet, maybe not now. You see, the history from where we also come, is a history that unfortunately created in some people's minds that Swanu perhaps is a party that belongs to a particular tribe.
Yes, I was going to come to that.
But when you closely look at the history, you see, one of the first fights that Swanu leadership had at the very early ages of its formation was with the Chiefs Council. And because of the differences that the leadership of Swanu had with the Chiefs Council, Swanu was ostracized by the Chief Council. And a lot of support through Kerina and the Chief, started moving towards the creation or supporting the establishment of Swapo, And when again, the leadership in Swapo started having some problems also within, with the Chiefs Council. Then the Chiefs Council had no choice but to now establish its own political party. That's how NUDO came about, I think in 63 or 64. Now, if Swanu was a Herero party, it couldn't possibly then have escaped the control or leadership of the Chiefs Council. So that tells you again, historically as a fact, that Swanu was never created to be a party for a certain tribe.
But it has become so now.
Yes, it has become so, or it was perceived, or is being perceived as such. But again, look at the objective facts. And I don't want to necessarily rely on those to make a point. But the point is that you've had senior leaders of the party who don't necessarily come from the Cherero-speaking tribe. I'm sure you had Dr. Tangeni here yourself. At the present moment, I'm the president. The vice president is a Kwanyama lady. And other comrades, whether Namas, Chwanas, and so on, they are still in the leadership. So I think it's actually wrong or inaccurate to characterize Swanu as a Herero political party. It's far from that.
Yeah. So, I see this that argument a lot. People thinking that because you have now thrown in some other ethnicities within that space, then, but the base of the party, the electoral base of the party, where you draw because the numbers are there, which constituencies are the mainstay of the party. Of course, we can argue like that with about almost every political party, but now we are talking about Swanu here. Do you think, for example, that you have NUDO, you have Swanu, you have PDM, those primarily three, drawing the majority of their base from the Herero-speaking constituencies? Does it make the space even narrower for you to navigate your way through to Parliament and other places where you want to be?
That's right. Look, but that's precisely what I meant when I said we need to break new grounds. You cannot use that as a base to reverse what I said, what I referred to as electoral, misfortunes. You can't do that. And that's why it is important to have people from other ethnic, groups, if you will, in top leadership, so that with them you help the party to break new grounds. Unfortunately, it so happens that, as you said earlier, that quite a few of our political parties in the country appear to have a particular, strong leaning towards a given, tribal ethnic, group. Swapo is no different. But again, that is perhaps history, and those are the demographics that we have. But anybody who establishes a political movement or political party and draws particular support from a particular region, you can't really fault them. You can look, for instance, at LPM and say, well, predominantly is a Nama, party. But the question is, why did the Namas feel the need to do what they did and join or form, LPM? Was it because they are tribalists, or was it because they were responding to the obtaining realities of the day? And I think in this case, the latter is true, that they were responding to those obtaining realities from which they couldn't escape. Realities that, in my view, were brought forth by the way in which Swapo handled itself and the government. You know. But it's true that as you want to move forward, you do not want a country that is fragmented along those lines, because it becomes dangerous.
Yeah.
You see.
Yeah.
But those are the realities that we all have to deal with. And fortunately or unfortunately, Swanu, ever since its inception, has had to navigate those very same realities. And to this day, we may be said to be drawing support from a particular region or tribe of our country, but in truth, we always reach out.
Yeah.
Yes.
The final question, and very briefly, if you can summarize it for me. So, Swanu is likely to post you as its presidential candidate. And as much as the party is not as big as it ought to be, with its history and everything, we have also seen instances of individuals like Dr. Panduleni Tula in 2019, as an individual really punching above his weight to get the amount of votes that he got. Do you think Kaaronda, the man that had a revolutionary history within particularly the trade union movement, has gained enough reputation to pull voters not only into the party but also into himself as a candidate?
Well, what I can tell you is that
Can you take on Netumana?
You should not discount Kaaronda, especially because of his history with the labor movement. You should not discount Kaaronda because also of his history with the student movement. People that I served with in the student movement, the people I led as students, are no longer young. They have long gained access to the voting demography. So don't discount that. But also, what is it that Nemendaitwa offers that is different from what Itula offers? I don't see the two offering anything that is distinctly different from one another. And then I think what you want is a person who will not only give hope to our people, but also who understands exactly what it is that needs to be done, And we cannot rely on the empty rhetorics that we've had for the past 30-odd years. And again, also, the question of, Dr. Itula having pulled the crowd that he pulled. I remember a few months before that election, whether you go through the taxis or wherever you go, a lot of people thought, well, we need to support a guy like McHenry. McHenry was also a likely, candidate. But what happened? Why did people choose Itula more than they chose McHenry? Other than the fact that the majority of those who went to vote for Itula speak Oshwambo. See, again, the question of tribe comes in.
Yeah.
Not so much the agenda that Itula puts forward, because Itula doesn't put forward any different agenda from what we have seen.
Time is up. But so thank you, Mr. Kaaronda.
Good, my brother.
Yeah, that's Evilastus Kaaronda. He's president of Swanu, just sharing with us his perspectives. Thank you for watching.